Welcome, everyone, to tonight's feature presentation. First, this cool artwork by Paul Davy. We can see some trees and some greenery growing out the carcass of our former giant robot overlords in one imagined socialist future. This is part one, by the way. Stay tuned for part two. Co-presented by Tom and me. I'm Cody. And the Denver Communists. Oh, we got a guest sneeze? Love it.
Oh, this is me.
I switched these two slides around. Sorry. Gotcha.
All right. So first, we wanted to, mention the challenges of discussing a socialist future. Go ahead. First, that we're not there yet. Getting to the revolution is the biggest challenge. We can perceive the future differently. Each of us, a future victorious working class needs to democratically decide how to structure society. So that's not necessarily up to us right now. A socialist future would develop dialectically and according to material conditions. Also, we wanted to say that Marxists try to avoid the pitfalls of utopian or anarchist prefigurative tendencies. So just prefigurative politics again. I did this in a previous presentation on anarchism, but prefigurative politics aim to prefigure or think ahead of ideal social relations, believing that we should live as if we are already free or living in a revolutionary lifestyle that would lead to changing society. The problem with this is that it does not challenge capitalism and does not transform society.
So why would we choose to discuss a socialist future then? Most people can't imagine living in a society different than the one that they currently live in. We need some kind of dreaming and imagining to see beyond where we are. The importance of thinking about long-term goals, determining what we're working on, and if we agree on it, as a simple creative exercise, because some hope is good. Yeah. And Marxists throughout history have had some ideas about this, so we'll discuss that a little bit. And also, please give us hope. In the hopeful words of our comrade Rosa, before a revolution happens, it is perceived as impossible. After it happens, it is seen as having been inevitable. Rosa Luxemburg is also famous for stating that the choice is between socialism or barbarism. We think about this basically because capitalism is destructive to everything important to us, like human rights, the environment, the working class, equality, democracy, and culture.
Oh, so one thing I kind of came across as I was looking into this slogan is Rosa Luxemburg attributes this phrase to Friedrich Engels, sorry. But as I kind of looked into this, apparently not. And apparently Kautsky was the one who was an original person saying a phrase very similar to that. So I thought that was funny, as Kautsky's known as this Marx vulgarist or distorter. I put this question in there. Did she do this unknowingly in prison, or did she masterfully distort the distorter and vulgarize the vulgarizer? I thought that was interesting. Anywho, I can post that article later in the chat. So next, before we pull up the rest, this next section slide is on how to get there. The actuality of revolution. So I'm going to read my notes down here. And actuality just kind of means the actual existence of something, the realness, the authenticness of a social revolution is what we're talking about. So social revolution as opposed to a political revolution, one that would be changing the mode of production, which would change society. So Georgy Lukács first introduced the idea of actuality of revolution in 1924. Neil Davidson further discusses this in Revolutionary Rehearsals in the Neoliberal Age. This is a reading group we're doing right now on the side. Davidson explains the following are required for a revolution to take place. So this is just some of his thoughts on analyzing past revolutions, which are primarily, 99%, those have been political revolutions, not social. But actuality, number one, the material conditions for socialism on a global scale. Two, preparedness for revolution. Three, the presence of revolutionary situations. Four, revolutionary conjunctures, which are international extended processes that can produce revolutionary situations. A revolution can succeed when a mass movement is organized that links various struggles against oppressions with class antagonisms. This movement would need to have the support of all the oppressed and whole sections of the middle class. The mass movement would be the vanguard party carrying out the social revolution. Revolutionary socialists agree that first, the capitalist state would need to be smashed, and then it would be replaced with a workers' government, as we'll get into. Our comrade Bill Crane in Illinois did a really good presentation on this here several months ago. There's some YouTube links to that, but check that out. He talks more about Neil Davidson and actuality of revolution.
So how would a workers' government be organized? As an example, we have the Paris Commune. Marx and Engels recognized the Paris Commune as such an important example of Marxist theory in action that they updated the Communist Manifesto in 1872 to make mention of it. So for 2 months in 1871, the Communards seized the city of Paris, and this was the first time in history that a workers' government took power. The Paris Commune itself was comprised of delegates from the Parisian National Guard militias, which were dominated by workers by neighborhood. The PC Paris Commune abolished the draft and standing army, separated the church and state, made plans to reopen factories under worker control, and lots more things. In 1905, the workers' councils, or Soviets, were formed as strike committees. They were made up of elected delegates from different factories to organize a general strike. In 1917, they were created again on the basis of one delegate for every 1,000 workers, which was superior to the trade unions because it brought together workers across different industries, uniting them as a class and as well as leading the oppressed. The Russian-style Soviet later inspired similar workers' councils in Germany, Italy, Hungary, Chile, Iran, and Poland.
All right, next we're going to talk about socialism. Oh, good, I'm not muted. So a lot of this slide and the next comes from, me and Cody are in another reading group called for the book State and Revolution. And a lot of what these next two slides come from is chapter 5, and some of that is from Marx's critique of the Gotha program, which was the German SPD kind of platform back in the 1870s, I believe. So that inspired Marx, Engels, Lenin to write this, but they called this the first or lower phase of communism. This would be the transitional phase of capitalism to communism. The state needs to be smashed and replaced by the dictatorship of the proletariat. That is the workers' government organized by workers' councils or Soviets, as Cody mentioned. Currently, we have what Lenin called a dictatorship of the bourgeoisie, or a democracy for the minority. The DOP would seize the means of production from the bourgeois class. The dictatorship of the proletariat would need to defend against the old order and attempts at capitalist restoration. Lingering effects of capitalist inequality would inevitably present as socialist societies emerging from the womb of capitalist society. Socialist society would require immediate action to confront issues such as the climate crisis, public transportation, pandemics, and such. They would need to decide on economic priorities with collective ownership over the means of production. They would have to distribute food and goods based on need. Equal rights would govern society, but rights themselves would still be a sign of inequality. The police, the standing army, and prison system would be abolished. The prison would be replaced by an elected and revocable community-based group of volunteers to handle small-scale violence, emotional distressed individuals, drunken brawls. Laws would need to be enforced too. Oh wow, that cut off. I was going to read this quote. So one thing I wanted to read here was in Meaning of Marxism, D'Amato had here in one section. Some of these measures might include introducing a progressive income tax against the rich, establishing free education on all levels, abolishing advertising and all wasteful, costly diversions, funds going towards health, education, and artistic needs, instituting free abortion on demand and free childcare provisions, confiscating all empty houses and from the rich to house the homeless and poor, establishing free kitchens to feed the hungry, and other things that we'll get into. And then I'll read another quote here too, from Lenin. Abolishing the bureaucracy at once everywhere and completely is out of the question. It is a utopia, but to smash the old bureaucratic machine at once and to begin immediately to construct a new one that will make possible the gradual abolition of all bureaucracy, this is not a utopia. It is the experience of the Paris Commune, the direct and immediate task of the revolutionary proletariat. All right, next, communism. So this is considered the higher phase of communism, when the old order has dissipated and there's no need for a dictatorship of the proletariat. The state would be able to wither away completely when a society adopts the rule, from each according to their ability to each according to their needs. In this sense, people would work voluntarily according to their ability, and there would be no need for society to distribute goods, as people will take according to their needs. The more complete the democracy, the nearer the moment when it becomes unnecessary. The more democratic the state that consists of armed workers and is no longer a state in the proper sense of the word, the more rapidly every form of the state begins to wither away. For when we have all learned to manage and independently are actually managing social production by themselves, exercising control over parasites, or, as Lenin calls it, the guardians of capitalist traditions. Escape from this popular accounting and control will inevitably become so incredibly difficult, such a rare exception, and probably accompanied by such swift and severe punishment that the necessity of observing the simple fundamental rules of the community will very soon become habit, and emphasis on that word habit. That would be a sign of a classless society with new social relations emerging and distinctions withering away. Distinctions between mental and physical labor would vanish.
What time is it? It's time for a 4-hour workday. Couple things we wanted to touch on. The concept of what work could look like in a socialist economy, and how would the way that we meet our needs change, or the way that we experience leisure. Some Marxists agree that we could meet the human needs for production with a 4-hour workday. What about the freedom from capitalist psychosis and the recovery from survivalist and scarcity thinking? There's like a long road of recovery process post-capitalism, I guess, is the point that I would like to make. Oh yeah, dictatorship of the proletariat. Some other things to mention about property and family. In the Communist Manifesto, Marx and Engels said that the distinguishing feature of communism is not the abolition of property generally, but the abolition of bourgeois property and the abolition of private property. They argued that proletariat property has been earned by their labor, but that bourgeois property has been created by the exploitation of workers. Marx and Engels discussed abolition of the family, and they point out that the family is based on the bourgeois tradition of private gain and the exploitation of women. Abolition of private property and the modern concept of the family would do away with things like wealth inheritance, spousal and domestic abuse and subsequent trauma, violence towards children, barriers to abortion, racism, transphobia, homophobia, cycles of abuse and addiction, unpaid burden of social reproduction, patriarchal family dynamics, etc. The glorified idea of the nuclear family, when in reality, the family is a source of a lot of struggle and frustration for a lot of people.
We wanted to also emphasize in thinking about a socialist future, the permanent and international aspects of revolution. So Leon Trotsky wrote that a socialist revolution could not be achieved in one country alone or could solely fight off the subsequent capitalist backlash. It would need to be supported by an international revolutionary movement. Workers' governments would still need to fight off the old order in order to preserve the revolution. Even at times of little conflict, the idea of permanent revolution would be needed to always push society further towards democracy and equality, and to replace the old systems of oppression. And that is the end of our presentation.
The end of our presentation.
Yeah, I'll just mention that these are just some books that we had referenced. There's one more here that we're kind of reading. There's some other links to some articles, the podcast that was for tonight, and then some of those YouTube videos we had mentioned in our archive.
So take a screenshot if you want to check it out, or you could check out the Denver Communist YouTube archive where we've got cool videos for you to watch. Seriously though, check it out. We have two very brief questions for discussion, but otherwise our presentation's over and we would like to open it up for group discussion.